guys, it's Cassandra, and today we're talking about the representation gap that we're seeing in our schools. As we look at our school leaders, it is our responsibility to make sure every student feels seen, valued, and they are ready and capable for success. But nearly half of our students identify as a student of color, but looking at our leadership, it often doesn't reflect the diversity that we would like to see. So it's not about just quotas, it's about perspective. And so when leadership reflects the communities that we serve, golden. We make better decisions, stronger trust between the community, and we continue to create schools where every student knows and believes that they belong. Now, just saying, our textbooks that we have in our schools don't necessarily tell the whole story, and I know our teachers know this, right? But curriculum is never neutral, right? The books, the examples, the historical figures, the voices we choose that communicate who matters. If students rarely see themselves represented in our text or only see stereotypes, we unintentionally limit the engagement and belonging to your community. And so as principals, we have the opportunity to not only evaluate text and academic rigor, but also share other stories that aren't being told. Okay, so let me just say, representation isn't enough. It's kind of never enough in my eyes. So diversity by itself doesn't create equity. Clearly, right? Hiring diverse staff or adding diverse books won't transform our outcomes unless our systems, policies, and instructional practices change as well. So equity means creating the conditions where every student, has meaningful opportunities to succeed and not just simply, equal access. Okay, I like to kind of share this leadership framework. Effective school leadership requires more than just kind of managing the operations of the school. It requires leading a culture. So pretty much means developing critical consciousness, creating inclusive environments in your spaces, supporting culturally responsive instruction in the classroom, engaging families as true partners. These 4 areas kind of become the foundation for sustainable school improvement. So many of our schools are trying to move beyond this kind of tokenism. Many schools unintentionally stop at just representation. Thinking about equity-centered leadership goes much, much further. It asks those difficult questions about our current systems, our current practices, and who truly benefits from them. So instead of kind of simply inviting families to our meetings, we invite them to the decision-making table. Hello? That's where true transformation and true transformational leadership truly begins. Now, I know you're familiar with the mirrors and windows. Every classroom should provide students with both mirrors and windows, right? And so mirrors allow students to kind of recognize themselves in the learning, and windows help them understand the perspective beyond their own. And so together, these experiences build belonging, empathy, of course, critical thinking, and, truly skills that every graduate needs, especially today. Okay. Here are the 4 domains of anti-bias education. So, creating an inclusive school culture that isn't just kind of one-off or one initiative. It's an ongoing leadership commitment. Our schools should intentionally, develop students' identity, celebrate diversity, and just continue to pursue justice and empowerment and action. So these 4 domains that we have really help prepare students for not only their academic trajectory and success, but their civic leadership. So pretty much we know that leadership impacts student achievement. So research consistently reminds us that leadership matters in every building. So schools lead by equity-focused principles demonstrate stronger academic growth, improved school climate, and better outcomes just historically for underserved students. So leadership isn't kind of just about simply managing our buildings, but it's one of the strongest drivers in educational and student success. Now, here is my favorite. What does it take to build that equity pipeline, right? So if we want sustainable change, which we do, equity has to be embedded throughout the leadership pipeline, from recruitment to preparation to ongoing coaching and to evaluation, right? So developing great principal isn't a kind of one-time, one event. It's a continuous investment in the leadership and their capabilities. Now, here's what I want you to kind of think of. What does it look like to start with a curriculum audit, right? And so you don't have to replace every single curriculum tomorrow, but start with an audit. Review your instructional materials, through simple mirrors and windows lens, like something that you could do right away. So this embedded, culturally responsive, really this expectation into future curriculum decisions, and it fills gaps with high quality supplemental resources. And so think of these small changes today create lasting impact for tomorrow. So we all know that inclusive leadership changes lives. So when students see leaders who understand their experiences and believe in their potential, their opportunities expand. Inclusive leadership, isn't about, we did leadership, we did inclusion, we did diversity. It's not about a box. So it's about creating these pathways where every student does well, they're able to achieve what they want to achieve, and they can imagine a future that believes in them and that's for themselves. So here is the leadership challenge. I'll leave you with this thought, this question. Who is missing from your school's story? Every principal has the power to answer that question through curriculum, hiring, relationships, and daily leadership decisions that you're making. Inclusion isn't just about like the one off the program. It's how we lead. It's how every student deserves to see themselves reflected in the future that we are constantly building together. I think many times, leadership shapes culture, shapes learning. And when every student sees themselves reflected in your school fabric, achievement becomes natural across every pipeline. And it's not just a one-off. I hope these tips help. If you need more, DM me. Talk to you later. Bye.